We'll figure that out later. Gotta write a grant. We'll talk about it.
Gotta write a grant.
We gotta write a grant. Figure it out. Okay, where were we? We were here.
No. Yes.
Yes, we're getting close to Frankie's question. We're getting close to answering Frankie's question. Here's one thing that you need to talk about. And what I want to do is, I want to talk about the types of ways you can be wrong. Somebody brought this up. I don't know who it was last class or the class before. They said, okay, so you do a study, you get a result. What if you're wrong? But whoever asked me this question didn't ask it that way. The way you said it was very, very succinct and very nice. You said something like, what's the consequence if you get it wrong or something? And I've been thinking about that for years, because when you do a hypothesis test, one of four things is going to happen. You're either going to get significant results or you're not. That's one thing. Either you're going to make the claim that your vaccine works or your vaccine doesn't. Those are the two things you're going to say. In either one of those two things, you could be wrong, yes? You could say the vaccine works when in fact it doesn't. That would be called a false positive. Let's make sure we understand why. Emily, nice and loud, my friend. Because you're saying there's change. Remember what the status quo is? The status quo is that curve. The status quo is people get sick at 12%. If you say your vaccine works, you are making the claim that your vaccine knocks it down below 12%. Significantly, statistically significantly. If you're wrong, that's a false positive. Positive means you said something changed. A false positive means you said something changed when it didn't. So in context, that type 1 error would be saying your vaccine lowers flu rates when, comma, in fact, comma, it, supply one more word. Saying your vaccine lowers flu rates, comma, when, comma, in fact, comma, it, or they don't or it doesn't. Sure. Don't care about English in here as far as the it versus they. Basically, you say your vaccine lowers the flu rate when it doesn't. That's false positive. Speaking of wolves, we have a phrase for that, don't we? That's called, there's a phrase, the little boy that cried wolf. That's crying wolf. Vaccine works! Oh wait, no it doesn't. That's crying wolf.
That's type 1, right?
That's a type 1, that's a false positive. It's false positive. Yes, false positive. A true positive, I don't have that, that's not an error. A true positive is a good thing. Hey, our vaccine works! And guess what? It does. Polio vaccine comes to mind. Polio vaccine. I'm assuming Claritin and Allegra and Zyrtec, all of those were true positives. That's why they're being marketed, and they work for most people, just not me. So those are all true positives, right? A false positive that comes to mind that was marketed. Anybody think of one? A false positive that not an allergy medicine necessarily, but any medicine, a false positive? One comes to mind. Anyone ever taken? Can you guys think of one? I have a good example, but if I can think of the name of it, hang on. It's the big tablets you drop in water, fizzles. Airborne. Airborne. False positive. It's complete and total crap. One study was done. Well, maybe not, but maybe worse. But they definitely don't make it better. It's been argued that it stays right about here if we're talking about cold symptoms, not flu symptoms. But the idea was one study was done for airborne. One study. Paid for by the company that was producing it. Slight conflict of interest right there. Unreplicable. No one's replicated it since. Yet everybody continues to purchase it. Why? If you read the bottle, it says things like, take airborne, from 7 to 10 days from the time you start taking airborne, your cold symptoms will be better. Guess what? 7 to 10 days after you have a cold, it's going to go away anyway. Whether or not you drink the fizzy drink. Right? I'm not saying it doesn't work for some people. Placebo effect's a wonderful thing. But that's false positive. Airborne, false positive, and all those little sub-generations of airborne. So airborne's false positive, Claritin, Zyrtec, Allegra, those are all true positives. At least as far as I can tell, they're true positives. They seem to be working for people. Good? Okay, so a false positive is a problem. Crying wolf. False positive. Type 1 error. What would type 2 error be then?
A true negative?
Not a true negative. A false negative. The errors are bad things. They're the false ones.
Oh.
Good. Thank you, Amaya, for that clarification. A false negative. An error is always a false something. There's two ways you can be wrong. False positive, false negative. It's kind of like our project from 243. So type 2 error is a false negative. False negative. Okay. What would that be, do you think? Now I'm going to back up while you're thinking about that. I'm going to give you an introduction. A positive test result, according to Emily, and she's correct, is when you say that something changed. So what's a negative test result? Saying nothing changed. Saying that we tried our drug and guess what? The vaccine doesn't work, the vaccine's not lowering flu rates. That's a negative test result. Back to the drawing board, if you will, right? Back to the drawing board. Back to the drawing board. Okay. Could you be wrong? Of course you could. Of course you could be wrong. You could say, the vaccine didn't work. But in fact, it does work and you missed it. So in other words, this is the curve you're comparing it to. It could be that there is another curve down here, yes? There's another curve down here that shows the effects of your drug, but you landed so far into this tail of that curve, it looks like you're back in this curve, which would make you think that nothing changed, right? So, a type 2 error, a false negative, means you say the vaccine is not lowering flu rates, comma, when, comma, in fact, comma, it is lowering flu rates. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't need so many comments.
Am I saying too many commas?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Twice, Matthew.
That's fine. Catholic school flashbacks, I apologize. Sister Grace. Comma!
Say that one more time.
Sure. Actually, maybe I shouldn't. Natasha, you say it. You say it right with the right number of commas. Go.
Saying
Type
it
2
doesn't-
error is, say it nice and loud.
Saying it doesn't work when it does.
Say, give me a little bit more. Say, take it away and define works.
When?
So saying, what is it?
Vaccine.
The vaccine, what does work mean?
Has an effect.
Saying that the vaccine does not lower flu rates, when in fact it does. That's what I'm getting at. That's why I say in context.
Oh.
You see why I have in context there? I put in quotes, I apologize for my
So like
quotes all the
that's
time.
like the base of all.
Yes!
Okay.
Yes! What Natasha just said is true all the time. A type 1 error is always saying something changed, comma, when in fact, comma, it didn't. A type 2 error is saying something didn't change, comma, when in fact, comma, it did.
So it's
That's
not-
always the base. You can use that as a template if you want.
Okay.
But then the context part is talk about the variables we're actually testing in the problem. Did I use the right number of commas that time? I only heard 2 coming out of my mouth. I think that's right. Yeah, when in comma. Yeah, okay. Sorry, Sister Grace. Rest in peace. Cool? Okay. So this is the kind of thing you need to look at. You want to look at those 2 error analyses. Now, more on why momentarily. Which one do you think is worse? This is step 4, I think. This is step 5. Which one do you think is worse and why? All of you may have different responses to this, and that's totally fine. So in other words, do you think crying wolf is worse, or do you think failing to cry wolf is worse? And it's up to you. I want to hear some ideas right now. You put down whatever you want to put down for this. But I want to hear what you think is worse. Do you think it's worse to get outlier results and release a vaccine into the world that doesn't lower flu rates? Or do you think it's worse to not get outlier results and withhold a flu vaccine from the world that could lower flu rates? And I'm not trying to put, I tried to hopefully said that pretty neutrally so that I didn't pick mine. What do you guys think is worse? Let me hear some ideas. Let me hear some ideas, please.
Worse for the researchers or worse for...
In your opinion, which one of those is worse? Is it worse to have a vaccine that works and not release it because you missed it? Or is it worse to have a vaccine that doesn't work, but you think it does, so you put it out there? In your opinion, which one of those is worse? And I'm not trying to give you a frame of reference for that. What do you think? Go ahead, Caitlin.
Negative side effects to the one that works that you can...
That's a good question.
The first one.
That's a good question. So you guys are saying a type 2 or a type 1 is worse?
So I'm asking, is there any negative side effects to the drug that you did put out there, but it
That's
doesn't
something you
work?
might want to put in your answer. Suppose you put a drug, hear what Caitlin just said. Suppose you release a drug that does not lower the effects of flu, but suppose that drug also has a high risk of side effects like, oh, I don't know, anal leakage. Right? I can't get that out of my mind after Olestra in the 90s. Olestra in the 90s. Well, that's Olestra. It was one of the side effects. It's still around. Jesus. Anyway, so that's a point you might want to put in, assuming no awful side effects. Maybe a type 1 error isn't the worst. You're just spending money on a drug that's not doing anything. But you might also say, since every drug has a side effect, if the side effects are worse than the placebo effect gotten from it, then I would think a type 1 error would be the worst. That's one way of putting it. Please, Blake.
I think just for the same reason that you brought up airborne, a type 1 is worse, because you've gone public and you have this terrible name forever. And at the same time, you may be hurting people with higher than a 12%.
Good, good, because you don't even know where the test lands. It might land it over here, but you got an outlier landed over here. Good, so a type 1 error could be worse. 2 votes for type 1, I love that step. Please, tell me.
And people think they're being helped, so they don't feel like they need to protect themselves.
Oh, so they're like, this happens so often. I'm remembering my guitar player back in the 90s, Brian, love you for watching this. Driving, he's like, I don't need to sleep, I have coffee. Like, no, you need to sleep, dude. And we've got to get to San Francisco in one piece from Salt Lake City. So you get to back and let me drive. No, I don't need to sleep. I just played a punk show, I drink a bunch of coffee, and if I run out of coffee, I'll eat Dum-Dums, and if I run out of Dum-Dums, I'll drink Mountain Dew. I need to sleep. Same exact thing, right? I don't need to take care of myself. I'm popping this pill that isn't really doing anything, but I don't know that because the company tells me it is. Thank you. Good, good. That's a good, very good rationale. Who else? Throw another one out there, please.
Well, I think it depends on the circumstance like we've been talking about, because a lot of times it can be hugely beneficial to the people if they say it doesn't work, but then it really does. It depends on the situation.
May I expound with an Excel spreadsheet? Because the reason I'm asking this, and Carly, this is an answer to your question from 2 weeks ago, you don't even know you asked. That just freaked you out, I'm sorry.
I mean, your acupuncture is a great